everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome virtually to the Boulder JCC. Today's program is in the webinar format. And those of you who may not be familiar with that, that means that your microphone and camera have automatically been turned off. However, you can still send us a chat if you're having technical difficulties. At the bottom of your screen, there's a thought bubble, and that's where you can chat to me. You can also use the Q&A feature if you have any questions for our speaker this afternoon. My name is Nancy Lipsey. I'm the Senior Director of Programs for the Boulder JCC, and I'll be monitoring our questions, and we will do our best to get to all of them. This program is being recorded, and we will send you a link next week so that if you miss something or you want to share it with someone, you can. Before I introduce our speaker for today, Ariel Berger, we have a short presentation to honor the life and the legacy of a member of our Boulder community who a fund has been named for, and we're going to talk more about her and about the fund, and this program is a way to honor her legacy. I would like to introduce the Executive Director of the Boulder JCC, Jonathan Lev.
Hi everyone, it's great to have you here, and it's great to have so many people from across the country and many of our partner JCCs to join us today to gather and learn, and also learn about this new fund that we have here at the JCC. So we're about 6 months delayed in what was the launch and what was supposed to be the launch of the Ilona, Irene, Rosenschein Holocaust Education Fund here at the JCC. It was going to be at our film festival, which had to be postponed and canceled for in-person 6 months ago, which everyone knows why. And so when we started thinking about the idea of launching it and figuring out a new program to be able to do it, this program could not have been more perfect. It's all about education, it's all about classroom and learning, and it's all about transmission through one of the great Holocaust educators that we've ever had. And so today, what I'd like to share is that this fund was launched by Larry Cohn, who's here with us today, in memory and honor of Ilona Irene Rosenschein, who was such an incredible gift to the Boulder community. Her legacy is felt here at the Boulder JCC with having her great-grandchildren participate in our preschool, but also in terms of the people that she connected with. And today we get to hear from a number of her family members, as well as her rabbi, Rabbi Mark from Bonei Shalom, which is a great thing to be able to all connect around this. For those that are interested, this is an open fund for people to donate to. It is an endowed fund, and that endowment will be in perpetuity to be able to ensure that we have Holocaust education in the Boulder community, and clearly that's going to extend further at this point to be able to touch around the country and potentially the globe with all the people who are on the call today. And so if you're interested in donating, the easy way to do that is support.boulderjcc.org/donate. And we'd love to have you join us. Irene, like many survivors, had her testimony recorded by the Shoah Foundation, and family friend and filmmaker Joe Dorman, who worked with Irene's daughters to combine her testimony with family photos and more recent videos for a short film, and we would like to share that with you to start the program today. Thank you so much for being here. The film's about to start.
Stores. We had a very large family, 5 boys and 5 girls. We lived a very simple life. Everybody was struggling to make a living. Most of the Jews in our town were either tailors or shoemakers, dealers. My favorite thing was riding the bicycle, going to the Tisa in the summer to the river and swim and bathe. It was wonderful. During the Sabbath and the holidays, we used to go and hike into the mountains. Even though we were dressed very beautifully in Sabbath clothes, we had a beautiful childhood, very loving, great respect, never any fights or quarrels. Things began to change when the war broke out in 1939. Within 2-3 months, things started to happen to the Jews. By late summer, around Tisha B'Av, they deported hundreds and hundreds of Jews, marched them to the railway stations, loaded them in cattle cars, and they took them away. We didn't know where. Within a month or two after this, there came out a law that all Jews needed to wear stars. I remember 2 neighbors who lived across the street from us, and we were very friendly. He used to come over and talk to my father for hours. And all of a sudden, they would not talk to us, they would not come over. It was like we didn't exist. In the morning, men used to go to the synagogue to pray. Townspeople would put on their beards and beat them up. Young boys, the same. And they used to go into Jewish stores and just loot the store in daylight. It was just terribly frightening. My mother never let us out. She was terribly scared for us that we might be molested. My father died in February of 1944. 10 days later, my sister Valerie came from Khust and told us that the situation is getting very bad and we will probably be deported. The last moments leaving our home forever is one of my hardest things. I ran into the stable and I kissed my wonderful, beautiful cow that I loved. Her name was Muncie. And I kissed the cat, which was I just adored that cat. We were marched to the nearby city of Naxolish, and that was the ghetto. We were assigned a room with 3 other families. We were a total of 4 families. In one room, that is. Each room had 3 to 4 families. 4 weeks into the establishment of the ghetto, they started to transport people out of the ghetto, families, complete families, like 400 to 500 a day. They gathered us the day after Passover. They had us march to the railroad station. We passed through forests and farm countries. And I remember once or twice, they would not wave to us, but they would take their hand and they would show us like this, that we are going to be slaughtered. After 3 days, we arrived to Auschwitz. And that was a terrible shock. We could see buildings. They had gigantic chimneys, very, very tall chimneys, many of them, many. And there was a terrible flame coming out from them and a terrible stench. Some men approached our train and they spoke Yiddish. They said in a low voice, "If you have a child, give it to your mother. If you have a younger sister, she should go with your mother." As we went another few feet, maybe another 5, 6 to 7 feet away from the cattle car, they were officers, German officers. We knew we were doomed. We were all being separated, and there my mother just left, holding my little sister's hand, and didn't even say goodbye to her. And then the 3 sisters, Chaichu, Esther, and me, we entered this big room. They told us to sit down on a chair, and they removed our hair. And then they directed me in another area to undress, completely naked. We were pointed at a heap of clothes. We picked up a dress, no panties, no bras. We were left barefoot, and we were led into a block, which was number 19. Within a few days, we were covered with lice. We were talking about whether we could ever see our parents again. A woman was pointing to the chimney, and she said, "That's where your mothers have gone. Stop carrying on." And when I see the gorgeous sunsets here, I compare it to the red himmels, to the red skies that were continuous there. Somehow it just tears my heart out. The selections were held about a week or maybe a few days after we arrived, to line up in rows of people, one in front of the other. There stood Mengele with other SS, men and women. We had to raise our hand, and I was completely naked, so he could see if I had any muscle left, of the ribs, of whether they still had any covering of flesh. He would point to the right. Those were the condemned people. I, including my sisters, we went to the kitchen on the garbage dump, and we would take peels of beets and rub it on our cheeks to make our cheeks look more alive. One particular time, there was a selection of very healthy-looking, blonde, stramme, hoge girls, which means very, very good-looking, healthy-looking, blonde women. And not many will be selected. So it will be a very special selection. I was selected, and a few others were selected, a total of about 27 or 29. We were led to the very front of the lager, where it said Arbeit macht frei. This is the first time that I ever left my sisters, that we, the four of us, were separated. And at one point, I had a feeling that we weren't watched very carefully. So I started to back off, and I started running. Luckily, there were still many people coming and going, so I could not be detected that easily. When I came to my sister, they couldn't believe their eyes, and there was a very emotional few minutes. Within 2 weeks, we were selected out of the camp. We were on a route for about 2 days, not knowing where we are going or what will happen to us. And we worked in a factory, and we could see large, gigantic, big letters, Siemens Electronics. We did that all day for 12 hours. And we were there until about January, the end of January 1945. The Allied forces really made up their mind to destroy the German factories and production of military supplies. So we had 3 times a day bombing. The Siemens factory was completely destroyed. So they divided us into 2 different groups. Valerie was taken away from us and into another group. We didn't want that. We just couldn't take any more, and we carried on terribly. I carried on especially. I went up, there was a 3rd floor. I ran up the staircase and threatened to jump from the 3rd floor unless they let Valerie come with us, or we should go with Valerie. Therefore, many civilians were standing around and watching what was going on. The SS came up and forced me go down, and I refused. So they pushed me down, they threw me down the stairway into the basement and started beating me and kicking me, and consequently I have a crack in my skull, which is here forever. But after this incident, they did let Valerie come with us. At the beginning of May, we had small, tiny little windows, and I look outside and I see some men are crawling on their bellies. They are holding onto a rifle and crawling on their bellies in a long ditch. I put my hand, and he motioned me, put his finger on his lips, motioning me to be quiet. I put my hands together in prayer, and I showed him that I am grateful. Within 4 to 5 minutes after this incident, you could hear shots ringing out, revolver, rifle shots, and they killed all the guards. They came in to our place, to our building, and they said, "We are free," and that tomorrow afternoon the Americans should be arriving with their tanks. The first time in our lives that we had ever seen Americans. The feeling I cannot describe. When we arrived to the shores of America, we had seen, they pointed out Ellis Island from the distance, and then we had seen the Statue of Liberty, and we all broke down. I met my husband in April of 1948. His family, the Rosenscheins, they all perished. Everyone. We fell in love, the biggest blessing in my life. I have 3 daughters. I know they are affected by my life and by Felix's terrible loss of his family. But I would like him to be happy and go on like any normal American would.
Larry.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Bev, Karen, Gail, Joe Dorman, the videographer, for allowing the community to learn about, and in many cases, be reminded of your amazing mother. Now everyone has a glimpse of who my dear friend Irene Rosenschein was. When my late wife, Sandy, and I first met Irene 15 years ago, over egg salad at a Bonet Kiddush, if I recall, we were immediately taken in by her truly radiant smile, her sincerity, her genuineness, and her beaming pride in her egg salad. As you saw, Irene had such a presence of positivity and of gratitude, despite all the unimaginable horrors and dislocations she experienced. She was indelibly marked by these events, but refused to be defined by them. She embraced each day with a resolute life force, appreciative of every moment. That was Irene at her core, embodying that indispensable trait that Professor Wiesel identified in Knight, and I quote, "When a person doesn't have gratitude, something is missing in his or her humanity. A person can almost be defined by his or her attitude toward gratitude." Irene was indeed thankful despite her horrific history, and she expressed it best by seizing the opportunity to make it a living history by telling of her experiences. I know there are countless others who learned life lessons about faith, resiliency, the power of human determination, and yes, gratitude from just being with Irene. She spoke to bar and bat mitzvah students, to students in Boulder public schools, actually to anyone who expressed an interest. More than once when I visited her in rehab, did I find a nurse or aide wrapped and in tears as they heard, many for the first time, details of the barbarity Jews like Irene suffered under the Nazis. Through all her interactions, Irene was a force for remembrance of the Holocaust. But survivors such as Irene, who can bear firsthand witness to the atrocities, are leaving us. With the passing of our survivor storytellers, the lessons to be learned from the Holocaust, the singular example in world history of man's inhumanity to man, are at risk of being lost as well. How do we know this is happening? A study by the Conference of Jewish Material Claims Against Germany found that almost 1/4 of Generation Z and millennials in the United States of Canada were unaware or not sure if they had heard of the Holocaust. 31% of Americans and Canadians and 41% of millennials in Generation Z believe that fewer than 2 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. 41% and 66% are unable to identify Auschwitz. As the Holocaust becomes an increasingly distant point in world history, it is essential that we not only remember the Holocaust and learn its eternal lessons, but at least as important is to ensure that the next generations know the important details, the causes and the killings of this horrific genocide. It is only through education that we can fix this problem of detachment. I provided seed funding for the Holocaust Education Fund for the dual purposes of honoring the memory of my dear friend Irene. But as important to me is to take a step toward remedying this frightening ignorance. To do so, the fund will support annual Holocaust education programming for all ages in the Boulder community, and I guess by Zoom across the country, from students to seniors, so that we in Boulder can do our part to fill the widening gaps in Holocaust knowledge. To be, as Irene was, a force for remembrance. I hope you'll join me. Lashana Tova.
I believe Gail is next to speak. Thank you, Larry. We can't hear you. Well, we try to figure out the sound there. Gail, are you able to speak? It's not working right now. While that's going on, and we try to figure that out, Rabbi Mark, I know you were planning to say a few words, so why don't we do that while we try to figure out the sound on the other side.
Hello, everybody. Just very briefly, it's wonderful to see you, Bev, Gail, and Karen. I actually was at your mother's grave today and was doing an unveiling up there earlier today, and I stopped and just checked in with Irene and just sent her my love. And this time of year, myself and everyone at Bonnet Shalom is thinking about her so much. I mean, we think about her every day, but one of the images towards the end of the beautiful film tribute of your mother, of course, is Irene lighting candles on, I don't remember now if it was, I think it was Erev Yom Kippur a couple of years ago. in the Lebin Hall in the JCC, where we have our high holiday services every year. And whenever, you know, she lit the candles, but really she was bringing her light into the room and just lighting up the hearts of everybody in the Bonnet community. She was absolutely adored, universally adored by everybody in the Bonnet Shalom community. I don't think there was anybody whose life she didn't touch in some way, just through, I mean, some of the wonderful, wonderful things that Larry said about her, just her positive attitude, her deep compassion, her unbelievable interest in everybody. She just wanted to know everyone's story, and she remembered everything, everyone's name, where they came from, what they were doing, and was just always just so interested in people. And yes, as Larry also shared, she definitely felt it was part of her life's mission to tell her story. So I just feel very honored to play a small part in this presentation. Very much looking forward to the presentation. Ariel Berger has actually been to Boulder before, many years ago, when he led us in a very interesting project, Dare to Dream, and we came together as a community. And so I'm looking forward to the presentation. And I think, as Jonathan said, it's a wonderful, wonderful way to honor the legacy of an absolutely remarkable and adored woman, Irene Ilona Rosenschein. So thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. And I look forward to the presentation, and just know, Bev and Gail and Karen, that your mother's memory is always, always a blessing for those of us who were lucky enough to know her and love her. Thank you, and Shana Tova.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Mark. We'll go again to Gail, and here we go. No, still not working. Might have to select the microphone. Okay, Karen or Bev, would either of you, I know, change of plans?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. I would just want to say that Larry's tribute said it all, and the love and honor that Larry and Rabbi Mark and the community had for my mother was beyond anything she could have possibly imagined in her life. She was always second to my father and really didn't feel herself a public speaker or very educated, and used to have us write things for her. So when she came to Boulder and she became so impassioned with Bonnet Shalom, and everybody loved her, and it was, in a way, the happiest time of her life. She, as Larry said, she was always asking people in the hospital, on the street, the neighbors, you know, who they were, where they were from, offering them pastries. And I'm talking about people from youngsters to elderly and across ethnic groups. And she just had that ability to be curious about people. And she would have been beyond honored, as are we. And Larry, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we thank everybody who has loved our mother. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bev, and your two sisters for being here. And the memory of Irene in this community will be felt for many, many years. Her legacy is profound with so many of us, and the way that she connected with everyone. And so thanks for sharing that. And I'm so happy that we can continue the education that she so much wanted to make sure that all of us had around the Holocaust. as the JCC and as a community and connected with Bonnet Shalom to be able to do that. Thank you so much to everyone for sharing that. And I'm going to turn over to Nancy Lipsey to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, everyone, all of our